So the great thing about this book, it is literally saturated with very powerful testimonies from people right here in San Diego. I had the pleasure of being a part of this project, and it was more than just writing a book for me. This was actually a part of my healing process. During the cohort, I was able to really process a lot of trauma that I had gone through, and putting it down on paper in a creative way gave me the ability to really gain my voice back. It was also amazing the people that I did this collaboration with. I'm very much friends with a lot of these people. I consider these collaborators my support system. So we're also like a family, and that's really genuine and authentic, and something that a lot of books are lacking these days. I want to share my story with you guys so that you can get a little teaser of some of the powerful stories that are in here that really directly, show a lot of the issues that we're dealing with today with the systemic disparities. This is essentially the cause and effect of what happens when we have to go through these kind of things. So, my story was titled To Give Myself a Chance. Um, and before I read it, just so you guys know, I am also a case manager for San Diego Youth Services. I was hired as a lived experience expert because of my testimony in this book. I dedicate this story to all the women in a California state prison that are lifers who told me to keep my chin up and never look back. November 2009. Get the fuck out the car, is what he tells me. He was better off asking me to hurl myself off of a high bridge into very shallow water. I can feel my entire body sink into the car seat as a wave of nerves hits me so tough that it paralyzes me from the waist down. I feel my heartbeat thumping in the lower half of my throat. In my mind, I am quietly praying to myself that my seatbelt will jam so that it will allow me to remain in my safety position within the car. You see, my pimp and I were parked in a dark alley. The car is idle as I contemplate my next move. His eyes are burning a hole through my black skin-tight dress as I struggle to buy time in hopes that he will change his mind about me working the streets tonight. It's a cold November night in Oakland, California. That makes me a little over 300,000 miles away from home where I grew up. Instantly, my thoughts are becoming chaotic from the energy of my pimp staring down at me, penetrating the side of my neck with such void and emptiness in his eyes. The weird smirk on his face, it makes me want to kick off my heels and run as fast as I can for as long as I can. But I can't. You see, mentally, my pimp controls me, and I wouldn't last out here 2 days by myself. Sitting in this car, my mind is saying, I can't do this. I won't do this, and I'm so over this life. It's a redundant rant of mine that I recite for courage. I look my pimp in the face, and in a soft whisper, all I can manage to say through the fear and anxiety in my body is please don't make me get out. 4 years I've been working for the same pimp, and it never got any easier. He and I have gone through this same routine day in and day out. He knows all my stall tactics at this point. Brushing my wig, faking to be on my period, pretending to lose my cell phone, or leaving my condoms back in the hotel room on purpose. Nothing works with him. He demands that I be 10 toes down and bring him back all the money possible, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So here I am as an adult, cohort forced, and deceived into prostitution. I was held in his service through psychological manipulation and physical force by a pimp named King. Fast forward. February 29, 2010, at 11:10 p.m., my life changed forever. We've just been pulled over by the police for having a broken right headlight on our car. The officer took one look at us inside the car and already knew what part of the game we were involved in. In his mind, all he had to do was prove it. I didn't know at the time, but my pimp and I are about to get locked up in Orange County, California, for pimping and pandering after being pulled over with two other working girls in the car. I had never been so scared in all my life. I was separated from everyone and everything I had ever known. I remember thinking to myself sitting in the car, asking Jesus to please forgive me, telling him that I didn't want to live like this anymore. Now, I had prayed this prayer before and always wondered why my higher power didn't hear me during my 4 years of being pimped. Here was the difference between then and all the other times. I really meant it this time. My faith was strong. I needed to be rescued and not by a man. So as the sirens rang out and the police surrounded us with car after car, I prayed to be rescued. It took the criminal justice system only 11 months to find me guilty on charges that did not fix my actions. That was 11 months of 23-hour lockdown with recreational yard almost once a month. No phone calls from family or friends, no visits, no commissary, and a 2-month trial of me fighting my case. The prosecutor labeled me a monster to society, a danger to the community, they said. So the DA asked the judge for the maximum sentence possible, which would have been 12 years at 85%, even though I had no prior arrest record. So it's heartbreaking stories like mine that demonstrate what is currently broken about our current judicial system and why I personally felt committed to fixing it. Instead of treating victims of human trafficking with empathy, they are often thrown into the criminal justice system, were labeled as prostitutes, and left with very few options but to return to a nightmare lifestyle that shockingly still exists in the United States. That night we got pulled over, I honestly thought that the police would step in and help me, save me, rescue a black girl like myself, get me out of harm's way. In fact, I really expected for them to shield all the girls in the car that night. After all, we were all just lost girls who had strayed too far away from home. Honestly, I felt as if the police were about to protect us from the evils of the street life we had been exposed to. So as the blue and red lights dance across the night sky, filtering inside of our tinted black-on-black Mercedes-Benz, through blank stares and tired eyes, I try to communicate to the other girls in the car that everything was going to be okay, and that the police would safeguard us from the beatings and the starving and the prostitution, the fear of having to risk our lives for fast cash. I finally saw a light at the end of the tunnel. I thought to myself, I could finally have the chance to go home now. Instead, the court labeled me a gangbanging LA Crip pimp, said that I was guilty by association, guilty of aiding and abetting. And on my sentencing day at court, they stripped me of what little bit of humanity I still had and left me speechless. My 56-year-old father was present in the courtroom as my support system at the time. He stood 3 feet behind me and painfully had to watch how the system had failed me. The court didn't care about the trauma that I had just endured. They didn't care that I myself was a victim of human trafficking, nor did they care about how this was going to affect my family, who would be left to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. All the court wanted was a conviction. So once again, I would be held captive in my life, this time by CDCR, California Department of Correction, and supposedly rehabilitation. So right before I got out of prison, I thought to myself, how would I face my family and friends after this? Who was I? What have I become? How would I ever have a real existence, a real family, a real job, a home? I took a moment to flash back on how I ended up in this situation in the first place. I was lured on Facebook by King, who promised me the world. He sold me a dream of living a life of prosperity and pretended to be my boyfriend until the day he told me that if I loved him, I would make money in this lifestyle to support us until that dream came true. He had used a tactic on me called boyfriend-girlfriend pimping. You see, I was lured into prostitution because my pimp pretended to love me. And this is how young girls like myself get caught up in the lifestyle. And the internet was just another avenue for him to prey on women. On my departure day from prison, however, I was a prostitute felon according to the state of California. And with that thought in mind, I would parole with tears and mascara running down my face. I remember at the gate, the lifer that had taken me under her wing, my prison mom, aka Mama May. She told me that the reason she had taken a liking to me was because I reminded her of her daughter back home. The reason she protected me on the yard was because it gave her a sense of nurturing that she couldn't place onto her bloodborne child, a child that was currently being pimped, controlled by a man that was well on his way of running her into the ground. She looked me in my face and told me, "Never come back behind these walls, Sierra. You are not made for the prison life." So at the bus station, I sat alone and I wrote a letter to God. My tears smeared the pages, and yet I felt somewhere far away my faith was bringing me back to life. It was then that my journey became so much deeper than just the desperation for my freedom behind prison walls. I decided to really take a leap of faith and begin the process to heal from all the pain, all the disappointments, all the lies, all the shame, all the guilt. And guess what? I never turned back. And I never went back to that lifestyle. And I never put myself in a position to be lured into that lifestyle again. Because I had finally found my truth. And it was right here in San Diego, California. And it wasn't in a man or materialistic objects, drugs, or some fantasy world. I found it in my ability to have faith and to give myself another chance.
Thank you. So Sierra, you mentioned the workshop and being part of that, and you also described it as a way of healing,
Yes.
and kind of reflecting and processing and those types of things. And I think that characterizes really well what the writing workshop project was all about. It was, like I said, there was no intent originally to publish these works. That happened a little bit later. It was a space for people of the community to come in, and come in and get these stories out. And it was through word of mouth. It was very informal. And like I said earlier, we would meet once a week. After everyone's got their busy lives, they have family, they have work, and community work that they're doing, and to show up every for 8 weeks and to work on these stories was really incredible to watch. So it took great courage and vulnerability and empathy and all of those things to kind of see these things to fruition. And then when we had the opportunity to put these books together, it was just an additional sort of opportunity for us to get the word out.
And one of the great things about this collaboration was that there was a piece of everybody's journey that I could resonate with. And it was funny how you thought you were writing your story, but really other people could relate to your story. So it became bigger than you. It became you being a voice for other people that didn't have the opportunity to be able to put their words or their thoughts or their feelings down. And so it created a whole environment to where we were coping and healing and strengthening each other and being vulnerable around each other and building each other up. So this book has a lot of genuine power to it, and it's really authentic. I definitely recommend you guys go out and get it and read some of these other powerful stories in here because it's truly amazing.